student loan help and COVID-19 policy updates. We have a lot of you joining. So thank you so much for taking your Saturday to be with us to learn about the new changes that have happened to federal student loans. Some of the programs or the programs that have always been there even before COVID, and how then to get help with your student loans. And we are here for you today. We have people helping out in the chat box. We will also be providing you resources. In addition, if you have questions, you can use the Q&A box to ask questions. And some of those questions will be shared with the group verbally, since many of us are asking the same things and have many, many questions with all of the changes. So with that, we can move forward. So today we are really honored to be joined by a great group of people. I'm Natalia Abrams. I'm the Executive Director here at Student Debt Crisis, and very grateful to have folks from my team on, Cody Zananian and Samantha Morgan. And we also are joined by our wonderful partners at Savvy. Lindsay Clark, do I have you on the line?
Hi, Natalia. Yes, you have me. And thanks. It's great to be here with everyone. I'm Director of Partnerships at Savvy and a student loan borrower myself, so I know how confusing and important this can be. Just a quick bit about Savvy. We are a social impact tech startup founded by student loan advocates and experts to help borrowers navigate the complicated repayment process. So I'm excited to be here today. I'm going to talk about a free tool we've developed to help borrowers in need right now, and looking forward to being able to answer any of your questions. Thanks, Natalia.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. And we also have Sam Singh, Policy Advisor with Next Gen Policy. Sam, do we have you on the line?
Hi, Natalia. Yes, you do. Thanks for having me here today. Just briefly about Next Gen. We're a nonprofit political advocacy organization dedicated to working on California policy across a broad spectrum of progressive issues, including confronting student debt. So definitely honored to be here today and to hopefully answer some questions. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Sam. And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Senior Counsel for the National Education Association, Eric Harrington. Eric, do we have you on the line?
I am on the line. The National Education Association, as many of you may know, is the largest professional organization in the nation, representing counselors, education support professionals, and teachers. And as you might imagine, a lot of our members have student debt. And I work in the Office of General Counsel and specialize in, among other things, student loan law. And we have been active, our members in our organization have been active fighting for relief broadly, but also in these kind of COVID relief packages. And we're fighting now for broader suspension. And I'm also very glad to be joining this great group to talk to you all about some of the reforms and relief that have been passed recently by Congress.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you for joining with this workshop and joining to help with the Crisis by Savvy tool as well. And with that, I think we can move on. So we want you all to know that we are currently still taking a lot of action. There has been change, and Eric's going to talk about that in just a second. But with all of the changes in the CARES Act, which was passed by Congress just recently after the COVID crisis started, we know that millions of borrowers have been excluded, even though they had federal student loans, and to no fault of their own. Because of that, and because of so many people that are being impacted by losing their job, having their hours reduced, having to be, a teacher, a camp counselor, and a parent all at the same time, we are taking action, and so many of you have been speaking up. And so more than 1 million actions, whether it's been joining these workshops, sending letters to your lawmakers, both state and nationally, and or signing a petition, which is almost now at 700,000 signers to cancel student debt to stimulate the economy. We really appreciate all of the action and hard work you've been doing, and encourage you to continue taking action. So moving on. So one of the things you can do, all of us, or a lot of us are home and stuck at home, is call Congress. This is the switchboard phone number. So for those of you that are joining us via phone, you can call 202-224-3121. I'll say that one more time since we do have folks joining by phone, and that's 202-224-3121. And you can tell Congress to cancel student loan debt. You can tell Congress that you want to see frontline workers have their debt reduced or canceled. Share your story. It's really important that we speak up and contact our state and national representatives. And another thing, and moving on, another thing that is going on right now is lawmakers are home, just like the rest of us. So we are hearing that they are, looking at their social media accounts, whether it be Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. So Cody's sharing, in the chat box, if you're on the computer with us, click the tweet that will allow you to tweet at the members of the House and Senate that we need to target most importantly to make sure that student loan borrowers are included in the next round of stimulus that they're calling right now phase 4. But we really want to ensure that with any round of stimulus package like before, that we continue to include student loan borrowers, and that we make sure that all federal loan borrowers and private loan borrowers are included. Moving on. So speaking of that, who is included and who's not? And you'll actually see this slide come up again because it's really important, and this is creating to understand who is included and who's not. And also, this is what's creating so much confusion. So most federally held loans are included. This is a good thing, and I want, for the millions, tens of millions of borrowers, we are finally starting to see student loan borrowers included in overall packages during disaster relief. This is a big step. Today actually honors an odd commemorative day that 8 years ago today, on April 25th, student loan debt hit $1 trillion. Now we are at $1.8 trillion. And after 8 years of hard fighting and so hard work that you all do in the work of advocates, finally we're starting to get a seat at the table. But we have to make sure everyone's included. So those that are included are anyone with a direct loan. That you're probably going to be okay if you have loans after 2010, but there are some direct loans before 2010. This does include parent loans. This does include graduate school loans. It needs to have that word direct. Also, older FFEL, or federally held family education loans, are included, or most of them are included. Only the ones that are held and owned by the education department. In the same respect, Perkins loans, which are loans by the school, are also included, and there are some certain state perks that Cody will get to in a little bit. The loans that are not included. So currently right now, you could have one of those older FFEL loans. This is where it gets confusing. If it's held by a commercial bank instead of the Department of Education, then you're not included. Definitely contact your loan servicer, ask them about this. You can download a student loan report, but it gets murky and it's hard. And this is why we are fighting so all of these borrowers are included, because it is not something that you should have to spend your time trying to dig deep and figure out. The other thing that's currently not included is our private loans. However, we are seeing certain private lenders bow due to public pressure and start to do some of the similar things that you'll hear Eric talk about in the next few slides. So just to take a look at how confusing this can get, and this is not to scare you off, this is just to kind of let you know we understand, we're hearing from you, and it's not your fault. So this is an example of a student loan borrower that has many different types of loans. They have direct loans that receive the National Emergency Forbearance. That's what they're calling it currently under the CARES Act. They also have loans that are not included, and you see them at different private loans that are not included that have different percentage rates. You can easily have a FFEL loan owned by the Department of Education and a Department of Education loan. Many of us have 8, 10, more than one loan. If you're a student loan borrower, this should sound very familiar to you. So we just want to make sure that you understand that, you know, it was at no fault of your own, whether you had this type of loan or not. There's no way to change that loan, and we are very hopeful that with a continued fight that we will see that changed in Congress. However, for right now, you need to make your payments, and we welcome the rest of this workshop so we can learn more about how we can get involved and what type of relief has been provided to us. And with that, I will pass it to Eric. Eric, do we have you on the line?
Yes, thank you, Natalia. So first, I'm going to talk today about what the CARES Act, the relief that's actually included today. But I also want to underscore, before I even get to that, some of the things that Natalia mentioned, that the first thing is that the relief that's in the CARES Act, no one on our side thinks is enough. And it's really, really important that we continue to fight for more, and that folks like you engage with your members of Congress to demand more relief as this crisis unfolds. As we know, student debt has been a burden that has been holding us back long before this pandemic, but it is time for broader relief to be included. But I'm going to talk about the relief that's coming. So first, under the CARES Act, as Natalia put it, all of the federally held student loans, the payments are suspended, and they should be automatically suspended. You should not have to do anything. The suspension should have taken effect on April 10th, about 15 days ago, so 2 Fridays ago, and it should be retroactive to March 13th. If you paid since March 13th, you can get a refund, and I've seen it in some of the questions already where you've contacted your servicer and they've told you it'll take some time, which is not necessarily surprising. The servicers are being deluged with requests and inquiries, and the servicers are really not the clearest and most on top of it on sort of their best days. So expect delays. This is one of the reasons that these kind of webinars are really valuable, because the servicers are going to not necessarily be a great source of information sometimes. So again, the suspension should take effect on April 10th, but it's retroactive to March 13th, and it will go through at least September 30th. So the CARES Act includes suspension through September 30th. It's possible this is not the last word from Congress, particularly if we take action and demand more, but as the law currently sits, loan payments will be suspended from now until September 30th, and all interest will be paid. So your loans will not be accruing additional interest during this time period. Now, for those of you who work in public service, if you work for the city or a state, or you're a teacher or a nurse in various public service jobs, and you have been putting yourself on path to obtain public service loan forgiveness eventually. And this is the program that if you make 120 qualifying payments, and you have the right kind of loan, the right kind of payment plan, and you work for the right kind of employer, that you'll have your loan forgiven after 120 payments. All of these suspended payments count toward public service loan forgiveness. So if you had 20 qualifying payments when the suspension took effect, each month will add an additional qualifying payment. So these non-payments count as payments each month for purposes of public service loan forgiveness. The CARES Act also includes important protections for student loan borrowers. And the first is that these payments, or these suspended payments, these non-payments, are treated as payments on your credit report. So when you pull your credit report after a couple of months pass here, they should show as on-time payments that were made throughout each of this period. It also includes, I think it's on the next slide actually, if I can get the next slide. It also includes additional protections, including halting any involuntary collections. on your loans for this suspension period. So that means if you have been getting your wages garnished by your employer to pay student loans, or Social Security withholdings or tax refunds have been garnished by the federal government, that should stop. So if you are filing your taxes after the suspension period, you shouldn't have any deductions come out of any involuntary collections coming out of that, and you shouldn't have any involuntary collections coming out of your wages either from your employer. If that's happening, you should definitely contact your employer to make sure that any wage garnishments of federal loan payments stop. It also includes that collection letters and other kinds of phone calls or other kinds of harassing things that your student loan holder can make. Those should also be stopped during this 6-month period. Okay, after this period, or toward the end of this period, beginning on August 1st, the Department of Education must notify you several times before the September 30th date. So they should notify student loan borrowers several times to tell them your student loans payments will start to snap back on September 30th, so that you have ample notice to know that it's coming. The notice must also include, under the law, information about income-driven repayment plans. And I know we're going to talk about the value of income-driven repayment plans if you haven't already considered those a little bit later. And then the other piece that's important is that students who are forced to withdraw from school, so if you're already in school due to the crisis, you can cancel loans that were made for that period. Next slide. All right, and just to reiterate, I know this is going to be one of the biggest sources of confusion, and it's not you that makes this confusing, or you're not confused. It's just a really confusing system. So to reiterate, and Natalia had talked about this quite a bit, the loans that are suspended are the federally held loans. What really matters is who holds the loan, who is the creditor, and for the most part, the post-2010 loans are direct loans that are held by the federal government. So if you get that magic word, as Natalia said, direct anywhere, those loans are going to be suspended. And there are versions of these older loans, the FFEL loans, the federal family education loans, that are federally held. And there's also some federally held Perkins loans. So all those federally held loans are going to be included. And what's not included are loans held by commercial institutions or banks, or that are held by the universities. So all those kind of old FFEL loans that are kind of predate 2010, and then Perkins loans that are held by your university. So there's a couple ways to figure it out. And I know the servicers, they vary on this, as they often do in things. Just because you're writing your check or your payment is going to Navient doesn't necessarily answer this question. You can have, and many people do, right? You have direct loans that are serviced by FedLoan or Navient, and you also have commercially held loans that are held by them. But the best way, one of the easiest ways to figure it out is to contact them. And you can log on to the servicer website, and many of them now have systems set up. I think Navient was one that I was just looking at the other day that makes pretty clear who holds your loans. You can also contact the Department of Education directly, and you can go to studentaid.gov. And Natalia talked about this. It can be kind of complicated how to figure it out, but you can log into your account on studentaid.gov as well to see who holds your loans. And again, the magic word is federally held loan. And just to be clear on the Perkins loans, if their Perkins loans is federally held, that's also suspended. But if your university holds it, it will not be suspended. And also, as Natalia said, private loans are not included in the suspension. And we're going to talk in a little bit about what you can do about your private loans if you need relief during this economic crisis. Next slide. Okay, and then Lindsay, who's picking it up from here?
Hey, Eric, this is Cody. I'll pick up where you left off.
Off to you. Thank you, Cody.
Thank you so much for going over those details. And I just want to reiterate what Eric mentioned, which is this is a lot of information and things have changed very fast for student loan borrowers. So again, if you visit studentaid.gov, You can find out all about your federal student loans, and you can visit studentaid.gov/coronavirus to see all of the relief that's being provided for federal student loan borrowers. So I encourage anyone who needs more details to visit those websites. That's the Department of Education's website. So I see a lot of people in the chat box who are asking, what about private student loan borrowers? And frankly, even about a week ago, we didn't have much to offer, but states have stepped up to try to fix the gap and provide private student loan relief. So just this week, a multi-state agreement that included California, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington all agreed to negotiate an agreement with private student loan companies. That includes companies like Ascent, Navient, and in fact, if you want to know if your company's on the list, you can email me at cody@studentdebtcrisis.org, and we can give you a full list. It's up to 20 companies, such as here in California, 20 out of 21 major private student loan companies are providing private student loan relief. Now, what is being offered is modeled after what New York State did just weeks ago. And New York State reached a similar agreement. So now you've got the multi-state agreement, and you have New York all offering forbearance for at least 90 days. They are stopping debt collection lawsuits against defaulted student loan borrowers for at least 90 days. Late fees are being waived. Negative credit reporting issues are being waived. And in the multiple states like California, Colorado, and Connecticut, they are also working with student loan borrowers to enroll them in other assistance programs. You know, things that can help you afford your mortgage, or that can help you enroll in unemployment benefits. So this is taking a holistic approach. So we are really excited to say that there is relief for private student loans, but unfortunately, it depends on where you're located in the United States. There are other states, such as Texas, that issued a court order limiting wage garnishments for the borrowers that are in default and are in the most distress. We also see that Washington, D.C. issued a similar order that limited debt collection for people who are in default. And also Kentucky and North Carolina are stopping debt collections for student loan debt that are called state-held debt. These are student loans that the state themselves issued and own. So you can see for private student loans, the relief isn't across the board, and it does vary from state to state, but we are seeing progress being made in these states, and that's very encouraging. Now, if we can go to the next slide, there's other relief. Student loan companies themselves are providing specific relief, particularly due to the pressure that advocates and borrowers like you have put on these companies. So we see Navient, who's often considered one of the worst actors in the student loan industry, feeling the heat, and they are offering a 90-day, what they call disaster forbearance. Now that means that you can put a pause on your student loan payments if you have a private Navient student loan. Now, unfortunately, they are not going as far as the federal government in that they are going to continue to accrue interest, meaning your interest will continue to add up during your 90-day forbearance. As Eric mentioned, the 6 months of relief for federal student loan borrowers does not have interest. And that was something that was very important to make sure that people's student debt burden didn't increase during this crisis. Other companies are also offering this disaster forbearance. I've listed a few here that are the biggest names. You've got Advantage, Ascent, companies called Brazos, iHelp, College Avenue, Common Bond, Earnest. These are just a few. What we will always encourage folks to do is contact their private student loan, their student lender, and ask what relief they are offering them, as it varies from company to company. Now, on that last point in the company-specific relief, I note what we call this. You will want to call your private lender and ask for a hardship modification. That means that you are facing financial hardship due to the coronavirus, and you're asking for a modification of your terms. Now, there's one other smaller area where we're seeing relief for other types of student loan borrowers who are not covered in the CARES Act. Here in California, the University of California system announced that they are going to provide suspended payments and suspended interest on loans that the institution carries. And that includes Perkins loans, Dream loans for undocumented students, and other types of institutional loans that the school themselves awarded borrowers. Now, unfortunately, we are not seeing this in many other universities, but it is a start. So you may want to contact your own campus or institution to find out more about how your institutional loans may benefit from relief. I also noted here some other school-specific relief. The University of Georgia and the State University of New York systems are offering partial refunds or prorated costs for housing, dining, and other fees. I'm seeing a lot of chat and questions from current students who are also concerned about how coronavirus will impact their future student loan debt. And lastly, there's going to be $6 billion of emergency relief given to schools from the Department of Education to provide relief for students, current students, who are impacted by the coronavirus. So those are just some important school-specific relief that I want all of you to be aware of. Unfortunately, because it's not codified into federal law, we always are going to encourage you to contact your institution directly and learn more about this type of relief. Now, before we go into additional resources and before I pass it over to Sam, I think we can take a moment to do Q&A. We've got some great questions coming through already. All right, let's see here. Okay, so Michelle's got a question, and Michelle says, I have a commercial federal loan. Is there any chance that this type of student loan will be included in the 6-month forbearance, the suspension of payment or interest that's provided in the CARES Act?
Hi, Michelle. I'll take this one, Cody. Hi, Michelle. So it seems like you know a lot about your loans, and I'm sorry that unfortunately you do have that commercially held FFEL loan right now. There is hope. We need to keep pressuring Congress. We need to keep sharing our story, whether we're calling or social media or sending letters. But we have a lot of hope for that. However, right now it is not included.
Great. Another question here from Kimberly. You know, Eric, this is probably a great question for you since you work with educators and other professions, other folks that are in the teaching profession. Kimberly's question is, how will the CARES Act suspension of payments impact people's public service loan forgiveness progress?
Thanks, Cody. Yes, so each month of the suspended payments will count toward your number of qualifying payments. So again, to refresh your memory, to be eligible for public service loan forgiveness, you have to have a few other things, but you have to make 120 qualifying payments. So each month that the loan payments are suspended will actually count as a payment for purposes of public service loan forgiveness. So imagine that you have 5 qualifying payments today. Next month will be 6, next month will be 7, next month will be 8, and all the way through September 30th. So each of these months count. Now and I can speak for educators and people who are in public service right now, if you are close to the finish line of close to 120 qualifying payments, it's really important that you move and apply for forgiveness right away, because one of the prerequisites is that you have to be in the public service job when you're seeking forgiveness. So it's important that any job interruptions don't harm your ability to get forgiveness. But also remember, it doesn't have to be consecutive. So your 120 payments could be in public service, not, and then in public service again. The payments just have to be while you're in public service. And of course, being a teacher almost qualifies completely for the public service jobs.
Thank you, Eric. Those are such great points. You know, public service loan forgiveness has some very particular qualifying factors, and we don't want anyone to miss out on forgiveness because of those details. And if I could just add to that too, there are other programs in federal student loan repayment programs that have a repayment schedule. You know, if you're interested in default rehabilitation, you have to make 9 monthly payments in 10 months. That also will not be disrupted by the COVID-19 6 months of relief. Similarly, progress in an income-driven repayment plan will not as well. So if anyone is concerned about progress being disrupted in a federal repayment program, the CARES Act makes sure to address that problem. All right, we've got a question for Linda. And you know, Lindsay, this is probably a great question for you. I know you talk to a lot of borrowers at Savvy. Linda found out that she has a commercially held FFEL loan, one of those federal family education loans. She wants to know if there's a chance that she can change that loan into a direct loan so that she can qualify for the CARES Act relief.
Hey, Cody. Yep, Linda, great question. And I, too, the other day just found out that I have a commercially held FFEL loan. And so the answer to your question is, it is possible, and the process that you would do in order to do that would be consolidation of that loan into a direct loan. However, that process can often take up to 60 days to go through. So you might not even be able to take advantage of most of this period of time of the suspended payments. And secondly, most importantly, consolidation is a very sort of intricate process with you know, a lot of complications that could affect your loan long term. It's going to impact your interest rate. It's going to, you know, combine those interest rates to a weighted average, and it's also going to extend out your loan. You know, long story short, you could end up paying more on that loan than if you didn't consolidate. So my advice would be to call your servicer and to ask about consolidation, and ask how that would affect your loan in particular, because everyone's going to be different. But the answer, you know, basically is yes, but you'd want to check out your options and how that would impact your loan long-term, just beyond this 6-month period. And don't forget, you know, I did the same thing myself the other day. You know, you can put those loans on a forbearance, that disaster forbearance for a 3-month period of time. It won't count towards your, you know, a total accumulation of forbearance that you're allotted. So, you know, it won't negatively impact you that way. However, you still will accumulate interest. But I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's great. You know, this system is so dense. I see Khan just put in the chat box, like, whoa, 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 I have a federal loan. It's called a federal family education loan. Doesn't that count? You know, as Lindsay said, it's all about the fact that your federal loan, if it's a federal family education loan, could be still commercially held by a private bank. And that would mean that you don't qualify. So for those folks that are like, wait, I've got a federal loan, but I'm not eligible, consolidation is the choice that could work for you. All right, one more question for this segment, and then I'll pass it off to Sam Sang. Sarah wants to know if her tax refund was offset to pay back her defaulted student loan. Can she request a refund because of the benefits offered by the CARES Act? And you know, Sarah, I can answer that question for you because I've been talking to borrowers who have this question all week. Yes, so student loan borrowers who have had their taxes offset, who have seen their wages garnished, or that have seen their Social Security benefits offset, may be eligible to have that refunded to them. If you visit studentaid.gov/coronavirus, you can learn about the details because it matters when your benefits were offset. If it was after the March 13th retroactive start date for these benefits, you may be eligible. You know, one caveat, I saw another borrower in the question box ask why his employer hadn't stopped garnishing his wages. We actually found out via breaking news story at the end of this week that the Department of Education hadn't informed employers that they had to stop garnishing their wages. The way the law is written is that if an employer doesn't properly stop wage garnishments, the department encourages the employees to speak to their HR professional. The problem is these HR professionals haven't gotten an update from the Department of Ed on what to do. So we are working with advocates and other allies to figure out what the solution is here. But for now, per the Department of Education's recommendation, you need to speak with your HR professional. And it may even help for you to print out the website studentaid.gov/coronavirus and let them know that these policies have been enacted. because as we hear, they have not been informed properly by the Department of Education. So keep bringing your questions, guys. We'll have more Q&A at the end of the webinar. With that, I want to pass it off to Sam Sang at NextGen to talk about some additional resources that are out there.
Great, thanks, Cody. So yeah, we wanted to let you all know that there are free resources out there that can help you access these new student loan debt benefits, as well as additional resources to help you out during these times if you're also worried about other financial stressors. So for those of you following along online, at this slide, you see, first of all, we want to let you know if you made a payment in March and you would like to get that payment back, we do recommend that you email your servicer. And our allies at National Student Legal Defense Network has put together some great free email templates to help you when you're contacting your servicer this way. And they've also provided another email template if you're still able and want to make payments during the 6-month relief period. You can still make those payments on your student loans, and the email template there provides instructions to your servicer that these payments should be applied to your principal to help pay your loans off quicker. So you can see that on the slide here, and you can access those templates at the National Student Legal Defense Network online at defendstudents.org. And then again, just want to touch quickly, we recognize that student loan debt may not be the only thing that you're worried about. So we'll just mention some other financial relief options that are available and out there right now. So there is temporary relief for homeowners and tenants in the form of a moratorium on foreclosures and evictions. There's going to be income assistance for individuals. Probably most of us have heard about these checks being mailed out. Those checks will go out to eligible taxpayers who filed in 2018 or 2019. And the amount of what you'll receive will depend on your income, if you're married, and if you have children. There are also expanded unemployment insurance. And these unemployment benefits will be on top of what your state may offer, including at least 13 weeks on top of your state benefits. Eligibility has been expanded for unemployment insurance to independent contractors, self-employed workers, and gig workers. And last point here, there's just going to be some ongoing support for small businesses and nonprofits. And in fact, in the latest federal package that was passed yesterday, the primary focus there was on helping small businesses. So again, just going to mention these other financial relief benefits here. We're not the expert on these items, but I do recommend that you call your Congress representative and or your state representatives as a first good step to get pointed in the right direction if you want to apply and get further information on these benefits. And I'll just end by letting you know that at NextGen here, we've compiled a pretty broad list of COVID-19 relief information from trusted resources that covers everything from perhaps, criminal justice related resources for veterans, education if you're, have kids at home and trying to figure out that setup, student debt resources as well, and mental health resources. So check us out. We're at nextgenpolicy.org. And so with that, I think we'll move on into getting to a tool that can help get folks through this confusing time. And thanks again to our partners at Savvy and Student Debt Crisis for putting that together.
Thanks, Sam. I'll take it away from here. Cody, unless you wanted to take any questions, or am I good to go?
I think we're good to go, Lindsay. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So we've teamed up with Student Debt Crisis and NextGen and some other great advocacy organizations to develop a free tool that could help borrowers whose incomes have been negatively impacted by this pandemic. And so what I'm first going to talk about, before I even go into that, is federal income-driven repayment plans and why those might be a great option to look into right now, even though you might be able to take advantage of a suspended payment under the CARES Act. So first and foremost, an income-driven repayment plan is a payment plan based on your income, as well as a few other factors like family size, tax filing status, number of child dependents. This all factor in to basically take a percentage of your gross income and use that to determine your monthly payment. So if you are unemployed and have zero income right now, you could be eligible for as low as a $0 monthly payment, okay? This is an incredibly beneficial thing for many borrowers right now regardless of whether you're eligible for the CARES Act or not, because what it allows you to do, it takes a snapshot of that income right here and now, and it will basically lock in a $0 payment for 12 months. Say you're now eligible to take advantage of the suspended payments for the CARES Act. Well, that 12-month period won't start now. It will start 6 months from now after your suspension of payments, meaning you're going to get almost 18 months at a $0 payment or incredibly reduced payment to benefit from. So we highly encourage anyone who's been negatively impacted financially by this pandemic, and this extends past this, at any point in time when you're repaying your loans, to look into income-driven repayment plans. There are a few different types of income-driven repayment plans. I wouldn't worry about getting into the weeds on those. The most important thing to realize is that it's not based on your debt amount, it's based on your income. Okay, so again, if you have an income that is low enough, you could qualify for a $0 monthly payment. And we've developed a tool at Savvy and with the Student Debt Crisis and NextGen to help you do this quickly, accurately, and timely fashion. We know a lot's going on for everyone right now. So you can find this tool at crisishelp.bysavvy.com. Again, that's crisishelp.bysavvy, BYSAVI.com. And essentially what this tool allows us to do is identify if you'd be able to take advantage of an income-driven plan that could reduce your monthly payment, like I said, down to as little as $0 a month. We're going to ask you a few questions about your situation, whether you've lost your job, whether your hours have been reduced, some questions about your tax filing status, your normal income, employment, all of these things to help us identify what your best option might be. And then even better, we're going to actually help you to digitally submit that application right through the tool. So it's a great way to be able to look and see your options, but also really take action and easily submit that paperwork. Oftentimes the paperwork can be the most annoying part of this process, but it keeps a lot of borrowers from enrolling in these programs. They don't attach the right file or income statement and things like that. This tool cuts through all of that, makes it really easy, makes sure that there are no mistakes on the application, and gets you enrolled right away. So again, you can find that tool at crisishelp.bysavvy.com. And again, a few reasons why you want to take advantage, if it's applicable, of enrolling in an income-driven repayment plan, or if you are enrolled, maybe recertifying your IDR, given if your situation has changed or your income has changed. The one I mentioned is, because you're able to take advantage of not only the CARES Act, but a longer period of time now with, a benefit of the IDR plan, so a lower payment. Even though you're locking it in now, right? Doesn't matter if your income goes up later, maybe you get another job, it's been locked in at this point in time. So you want to take advantage of that benefit. The other reason is, and Eric mentioned this, that being on an income-driven repayment plan is a qualification for public service loan forgiveness. It's required in order to be eligible for the program. If you plan on taking advantage of these 6 months of suspended payments towards credits on PSLF, you will need to already be eligible for PSLF. And what that essentially means is you already need to have worked for a qualifying employer or be working for a qualifying employer. You will need to have the right loan type, a direct loan, and you will need to be on an eligible repayment plan. And an eligible repayment plan is an income-driven repayment plan. So those sort of big three things, and that's why for many people, if you aren't on an IDR and you're planning, to take advantage of these 6 months with no payment but qualifying towards PSLF, you will need to get on one as soon as possible so that you can be able to do that. And then last but not least, I would say, we've all had probably negative experiences with our servicers. I personally can speak to just so many troubles with Navient. And what I would say is, we're constantly building in aspects of this tool for borrowers to check their benefits and what they're eligible for. And, this is going to sort of be a safety net for when the servicers might not give you the right information. So I would suggest, even if you aren't able to take advantage of an IDR right now, creating an account, and that way you can stay in the loop on all the benefits that we're constantly going to be adding to it as this situation, evolves over the next couple of months and things change. But again, that site is crisishelp.bysavvy.com. And most importantly, I don't think I mentioned this, it is completely free for all borrowers. So, spread the word, tell everyone you know. We've made this tool completely free, and we encourage you to use it, and we hope that it can be helpful. And we're really excited to be here, and hopefully I can answer any questions that you guys may have. Thanks, Cody.
Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you to your team at Savvy and others that have supported the tool. You know, the folks at Savvy, when this crisis started, knew that they had to help in some way. This tool is just a simple way to help people afford their debt. But I know that for many of you, this crisis is having, you know, a major impact on your personal finances. So hopefully this is just one small way that us at Student Debt Crisis, NextGen, and the folks at Savvy can help alleviate the burden. So with that, I think we can go into the next round of Q&A. Lindsay, since you just touched on it, I did have a couple of folks that are asking about income-driven repayment plan. Particularly, Lavinia asked, if you enroll in an income-driven repayment plan right now, will that last for the next 12 months, or is it just going to be applicable for 6 months? Seems like there may be some confusion with the 6 months of relief provided by the CARES Act and what would typically be 12 months of affordable payments in an income-driven repayment plan. Can you help clarify?
Yeah, great question. So right now, if you enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan, it would take a snapshot of that income right here and now and lock it in for its normal course of 12 months. That's an IDR goes 12 months at that same payment that you qualified for when you applied. However, right now, because of the CARES Act, your payments would be suspended for these 6 months. So your IDR plan wouldn't start until 6 months from now. And so then September 30th comes in October, that would be the first month on your new income-driven repayment plan at the same price or same monthly payment that you locked it in now. So, you know, you've got the 6 months of this, you know, zero payments, and then that 12 months is going to start after the 6 months is over. So that's why I hinted at earlier that it could be very beneficial, especially if your income has been reduced to zero, to be able to take advantage of this right now, because your income situation might change later on, and you won't be able to take advantage of that same, you know, low monthly payment as you would right now, right? So it's got to be based on, you know, your income at this point in time. So again, if you're applying now, you're able to lock that in, and then it would start after the CARES Act is over, September 30th, and then you get another 12 months, you know, past that at that payment that you were able to lock in now. So I hope that was, I know it can be a little bit confusing, but you know, you want to look into your options, because again, this can be really beneficial, especially for those whose incomes, you know, if they've become unemployed or really impacted. This allows you a longer time period in which to take advantage of these low payments. Hope that was helpful, Cody.
That's perfect. Thank you. And, you know, this stuff gets very dense when we've got standard repayment options that are offered for years, and then we've got new CARES Act relief. We understand how confusing that can be. So thank you for clarifying that, Lindsay. You know, Eric, since you were talking about your work with educators, I've got a couple of questions from folks who want to know if all teachers are eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Another person asked, what about veterans and other first responders? Undoubtedly, people want to know about public service loan forgiveness. Can you help clarify who qualifies?
Yeah, so the touchstone of public service loan forgiveness is the type of employer you have and not necessarily the type of work you do. And just so for the most part, teachers are going to be covered under public service loan. That is, it'll be a qualifying employer. So if you're a public school teacher, that will qualify. If you're a faculty of a community college, that will qualify. If you're at a public charter, if you're at a nonprofit school, if you're at a for-profit, I think that could be a little fuzzy, but for the most part, you should consider yourself eligible, and make sure that you fill out and submit the employment certification form as soon as you start your first public service job, every year and anytime you switch employers. As for the other ones, the kind of first responders, I think for the most part, but it depends on which employer is. So for example, this is a little bit outside my area of expertise, but my understanding of certain nurses, it really just depends on what kind of hospital you work for. If it's a for-profit, it may be under different rules. So the focus point is where you or who you work for. But as far as educators, for the most part, primary school and secondary school educators are going to be included.
Thanks for clarifying. As you were speaking, Eric, I see a couple of folks ask, what about principals? What about folks who work at community colleges? Someone even mentioned social workers. You know, as Eric mentioned, if your employer, the person who signs your checks, is a government agency, or if a nonprofit charitable organization, you do qualify. And as always, you can visit studentaid.gov, the Department of Ed's website, to find out more about the programs. Okay, and I've got a question here, and I think Natalia can help answer this because we talk to parents all the time. This is from Lindsay, who says that her parents have Parent Plus loans, and she has student loans for her own education. Do they both qualify for the relief that's offered by the CARES Act?
Yeah, hi, Lindsay. That's a great question. Yes, direct federal loans that are Parent Plus loans, parent loans, or graduate student loans are included. What matters here is whether you have a federal loan that is included as a direct federal loan, or even a Department of Education held SFEL loan. But this is another thing that creates confusion. We get this question every time because of the moniker of student loans. And in fact, it's all federal higher education loans. It's probably a better way to think about it. So absolutely, if you went to graduate school, or if your parents have loans and they are federal direct loans, they count. Keep in mind, though, you could have private loans where your parents co-signed for you, and that you'll want to check with the specific private lenders to see if they are a part of the multi-state agreement. Cody?
Thank you so much, Natalia. All right, I've got another question here about, this is from Alfonso, and Alfonso's in a position where he can still actually continue to afford his monthly payments during the CARES Act. And he just wants to learn a little more. What if he chooses to manually make payments during the 6-month suspension? Lindsay, can you help clarify, what that means for a student loan borrower if they still make payments during the next 6 months?
Sure, and I think I'm 99% sure, but Cody and Natalia, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that if you plan on doing that, because if any auto debit payments that you might have set up are going to be suspended, if you plan on making a payment, you're going to have to call and set that up. So just want to make sure, to opt in to do that. So, they're not just going to continue taking that money out. But if you do plan on being able to continue to make payments, the great thing about there being zero interest is that it will go directly, all of the payment will go directly towards your principal balance. So for many people who are fortunate enough to be in the situation to perhaps take advantage of this period of time, these 6 months with no interest, that means that all of their payments made are going to go right to the principal balance on their loans. And this is huge. I don't know about everyone out there, but I accumulate almost $1,000 in interest a month on my student loans. So not being able to have to pay that interest and being able to really take a chunk out of your principal balance could be huge. I know many people say they've been paying on their loans for years and the balance just goes nowhere or even increases, and that's because of that interest. So if you are in the position to be able to take advantage of that, now might be a good time. And again, it's going to go directly to tackling that principal balance instead of the interest. So Cody?
Thank you so much for that, Lindsay. I see a couple of folks asking a similar question. Adam's asking, what about student loan borrowers who have some private loans and some federal loans? Which loans qualify for this relief under the CARES Act?
Cody, I can take that if you want me to.
Please. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah. So I'm in the same position as well, and actually both of them are with Navient. So I just want to be careful for anyone who might have a federal servicer. It doesn't mean that you automatically have federal loans. You might also have some private loans with that servicer. But again, as Natalia and Eric have gone through, federal loans, there are going to be some federal loans that do qualify and some that don't. So you're going to have to check about your federal student loans specifically. But as far as private student loans, those do not qualify under the CARES Act suspension. However, and I know I did this personally myself, we highly recommend you calling that lender, or that servicer, to try to see what your options might be. As Cody has sort of talked about, a lot of them are enacting a disaster forbearance, making that available that you can get onto. That would be a suspension of payments, still interest accumulating oftentimes, but it would allow you to suspend payments for a period of time. So for private loans, because every lender can be a little bit different, reach out to that lender and see what options are going to be available to you. And as far as your federal loans go, you'd have to check and make sure that they are, direct or federally held FEL loans, if they are FEL loans. So I hope that clears that up.
Thank you, Lindsay. Sam, if we still have you on the line, I've got a lot of folks in California who have student loan debt, but of course the cost of living is also burdensome. If you don't mind, could you share your resource page one more time with these folks so that they can tap into other resources that are available to them?
Sure, thanks, Cody. Yeah, at NextGen, we've compiled a list of just broad resources across the board in many different areas that you might be feeling the impact of the COVID-19 crisis. So our website is nextgenpolicy.org. And especially for Californians to check out the state's COVID-19 government website to check for other release benefits as well.
Thank you, Sam. And I really have to just double down on some of the commendable work that you're doing at NextGen. I know you guys have been talking about other issues like mental and physical wellness during this crisis. And I know a lot of us are hitting a wall this week. It's been difficult. So other resources like mental health resources and other benefits or other resources to help with financial wellness goes really a long way right now. All right. Natalia is an advocate who's been working on this for years. I've got questions from a lot of folks who wanted to know how they can reach out to lawmakers to expand the relief that's offered to from the CARES Act. Can you tell us a little more about the actions that folks can take?
Sure. So Cody's going to share some links with you all if you're on the computer, where you are able to talk on social media to lawmakers, because that's what we're hearing, that they are paying attention. So we've created a very easy, click-to-tweet tool. You can also call the U.S. Capitol directly, get their switchboard, and find your representative. We encourage you to call your representative and both of your senators and your state officials if you have time, because let's face it, a lot of us have some extra time on our hands, or at least we're home. So while you're at home, if you're able to call, you can dial 202-224-3121. I'll say that one more time, 202-224-3121. It's really important that they hear from all of us. Because of all of your hard work, for those of us that have been, on this workshop the entire time, the more than 1 million actions that have been taken in just over a month's time, because of all of us that have been so impacted by the COVID crisis. Now is the time that you have to be speaking up, letting them know your story, letting them know how this is impacting you, so we can ensure that we include student loan borrowers, which includes Parent Plus loans, graduate student loans, private loans. We can include all student loan borrowers in the next stimulus and have a student debt stimulus.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalia. And you're spot on. We know Congress and other lawmakers are at home right now, and they're actually eager to hear from their constituents during this time. All right. I think we have time for just a couple more questions here. Again, Lindsay, I think because you talked to a lot of student loan borrowers and you see a lot of their loan situations, I think you can help clarify for Molly. Molly goes into her online account and she sees that she has Stafford loans and Graduate Plus loans, but she doesn't know if these are eligible for the CARES Act relief. Can you help clarify what these terms mean and how does that connect to a direct loan and all of that? It's kind of word soup for people.
Yeah, sure. And I actually have the exact same type of loans as well. And that's when I realized going into my account, I saw that I had Stafford loans, federal Stafford loans, which are FEL loans, that FFEL. It might not say FFEL, but if it says federal Stafford, that's a FEL loan. And I have a Stafford loan, a FEL loan that is eligible, okay, or federally held. And I have one from the exact same year and same semester that is not eligible. So the easiest way that you might be able to look on your statement is to look at the interest rate. If it's down to zero, and if it says $0 payments, that would indicate that your servicer at least is counting that as eligible towards the CARES Act. However, you might want to go online, and Cody, I think maybe we put the link in the chat to download your file from NSLDS to make sure and check that your loan is in fact either federally held or commercially held. The other great thing about the Savvy tool is that when you go through, we sync your loan data right over from your servicer, and so we're able to identify that loan type right away, and if that's eligible. So that might be a helpful alternative instead of going to the Department of Ed. So again, those FFEL loans can be both eligible and not eligible, depending upon if they are federally held or if they're commercially held. Okay, so that's what a federal Stafford loan is. Now, direct loans, the ones that are eligible, your Grad Plus loan should be direct, and it should say the word direct in it. Literally, if it's a direct loan, it will have look for the word direct in that loan title, and those should all be eligible. Direct loans are all eligible for this CARES Act benefit. So that's usually the easiest way to look on non-direct and direct loans is if it's direct, it will have the word direct in it. If it's not, it won't. There are some loans that are, to make things more complicated, a direct Stafford loan. Again, if you see the word direct, it's direct, okay? So that's sort of the first thing you need to look for. If there's no word direct in there, then there's a good chance that it's another type of loan. And that might be, that Stafford loan that you were talking about. So, but again, on your servicer account, things should be updated if you become eligible or any of your loans have. They should update those accordingly. So you want to check there and make sure that, if you think you're eligible, then those interest rates are at 0 and that payment is at 0.
Thank you, Lindsay. And, something that I've noticed just talking to student loan borrowers in the last week is some of the extra confusion that the student loan companies themselves create. So I know a lot of folks have reached out to us and said things like, I have a letter D loan. Like the student loan companies themselves have their own coding system for their portfolios. So if you have any questions about what type of student loan you have, that studentaid.gov website can really help clarify. And if you still have any more questions, you can reach out to us at Student Debt Crisis, and we can help address it. Because between the complex student loan system and the student loan servicing companies, there is just a lot of information that is unclear out there. Okay, great. I think we're going to take one more question, and then we'll wrap things up here for the day. Let's see here. This is actually a perfect question because it relates to what I just mentioned, and I think it's so important to reiterate. Sarah says, where do I find out if my student loan qualifies? She has Sallie Mae and Great Lakes as student loan servicers, but it's unclear to her. So Lindsay, if you want to just reiterate one more time where folks can go to get this information, I think it will help a lot of the people on the phone call today.
Sure. So the best way to check and download your sort of total federal student loan file is at studentaid.gov. You're going to need your SSAID, your username and password, which you might have created a long time ago, but if you forget, you can always reset it. And you'll be able to download what is called, and I think it might be slightly different, NSLDS file. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cody. And that will essentially, it's a bit bulky, but it will essentially be able to tell you if you have a federal loan, what type of loan that is, and who holds the loan, whether that is the Department of Education. But that's only for federal loans. And so, if you do have private loans, they won't be listed there. Sallie Mae is a private loan lender at this point. So there's a good chance that those are private loans, but go ahead and double check from your NSLDS file. But private loans, and you can always call that entity if you're confused or unsure, because some entities hold both federal and private. Call that entity to reach out, and if you have any questions, reach out to us here. But those should be the options that you might have just to make sure.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. And I think this is a great time to wrap up. We really want to thank Lindsay and the team at Savvy, not only for this really spectacular COVID tool, but all of the help on these workshops that we've been doing. Our special guest today from the National Education Association, Eric, thank you. Sam with Next Gen Policy here in California, and the team at Student Debt Crisis. We really appreciate you all joining on. And most importantly, we appreciate all of you in attendance that took the first step of trying to, understand your student loans and get them under control during this time. We will continue to do these workshops as we get more information, and you will be receiving an email with more information and all of the links and slides that have been discussed today. So that will be coming shortly. And again, have a wonderful day, and thank you for spending your Saturday with us.
Great, thanks everybody.